Hello and welcome to the MB Om podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
This episode of the podcast is also brought to you in part by FavYogis. The FavYogis app is back with new features for teachers that let you create and manage your own private classes while making payment and registration a breeze. Do you have regular private clients? Make life easier with autopay. Forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're Canadian, try some sort of e-transfer or PayPal combination. You can use autopay to enable repeat payments and keep calendars in sync with classes. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teachers and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers, and teachers and students stay connected. So head on over to the App Store on your device and find FavYogis. It's FavYogis. On top of that, it's totally free to download and give a try. So head on over to your App Store and find FavYogis. FavYogis. Oh, and make sure you use code MBOM, and let them know that I sent you. Hey everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the podcast. This week on the podcast, I am super excited to be rejoined by Chioma Njoku from the Mindful Bookkeeper. And I had Chioma on the podcast back in October 2018. So it's been just over a year since her and I chatted last. And on the last episode of the podcast, we talked a lot about what it means to mindfully bookkeep, what it means to mindfully take care of our expenses. And on this episode, we dive even deeper than that. We talk about some of the biggest mistakes that yoga teachers, studio owners, and other spiritual healers make with money, how we can start understanding the emotional side of money, and bring abundance mindset into our lives and businesses. We talk about connecting with money, why it's important, our money stories, as well as she shares a little bit about her cash flow system that she's created to help yoga teachers have more sustainable businesses. So this is a really powerful episode, especially if you've been working with your money story, or if you've been struggling with money or your abundance mindset. If you guys have listened to me for a while, then you know that I did a ton of personal work on my own money story at the start of 2018, and it's a continuously evolving process. And I have a ton of passionate thoughts about this side of the business of yoga, which you'll hear in this episode. And I hope that this episode really helps you to really get clear on your money side of things with your yoga business, and hopefully that can help you create a more sustainable business in the future. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Chi back to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast today, Chi. I'm really excited to be chatting with you.
I am super glad to be back. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the last time we chatted was October 2018, so just over a year ago. And I thought it would be a good place to start to just back up. And can you tell me what's been going on over the last year of your life?
Yeah, so the last time we spoke, I was living in Houston, Texas, and currently I live in Chicago, Illinois. So I actually moved north, back home. I'm a Midwest girl, Midwest United States girl. So that's been nice, close to family. And it's interesting. It's like how do I say this? Because it's like Houston, I think, really helped me find myself. And so now I'm back in my home space, and like all the things that I've really discovered about me in Houston, I'm like going full force here in Chicago. So for example, lots of yoga, even reconnected with stand-up paddle, something I hadn't done in a while. So during the summer, I was on the lake all the time, just in my happy spot. And even when it comes to what I do now, talking about money and, via bookkeeping, but yet not really, it's like my voice has really amplified. And, I'm just really touching, I feel like my yoga has evolved into me just really spreading my message and at the same time, like growing as a practitioner. It's been a good ride, just reconnecting with family, reconnecting with roots. I think that's really what it's been throughout the year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what's the yoga community like in Chicago?
It's a very, I call it a slightly more established. I think it's because of where I'm at. If I feel more grounded, so I'm attracting and being attracted to more grounded people, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So I seem to have found myself in like an Ashtanga-based or Ashtanga-like community. People have been practicing for like 20 plus years. There's studios that have been around for just about that long. And then at the same time, there's newer studios around and everyone is just really, there's a different, I think it's more like I'm aware now of the support and just how we like nurture each other. And because I was a newer teacher in Houston, I couldn't see that much because I was more focused on, am I doing this right? You know, the insecurities and the scarcity. Am I doing this right? Is this yoga like? Am I respecting the practice? And here in Chicago, it's like I'm settled.
Yeah, that's definitely a nicer feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. And I think that every different yoga community supports us in different ways based on where we're at in our journey. And so it's really awesome that moving locations has been able to support you in a different way. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so one of the things that we talked about the last time we chatted was really diving into, you know, what you do as the Mindful Bookkeeper and what you do with helping yoga teachers kind of understand more of the money side of things. So I want to dive into that a little bit more. And I think let's start with, what are some of like, I guess, the biggest mistakes that yoga teachers, studio owners, and wellness entrepreneurs and spiritual healers sort of make around money?
So this is the thing that's still the same.
We can just reiterate though.
Between both parts, the biggest mistake, despite the increased level of knowledge now around business, is still this aversion of money. And point blank, it's just not looking at it unless there's a need, unless you absolutely have to. So it results in looking at the money as like a means instead of seeing it as something that supports you as a practitioner or spiritual healer, really supports you, supports your work, supports your community, is communicating with you. It's still being seen as money, unfortunately, still being seen as this boxed in like poison almost. And I don't think that's really our fault still. It's just something that is going to take a while for this to shift, especially in our community. But it's happening. I see the shift.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think it's really interesting because being in, I guess, immersed in a number of different yoga communities, I feel like I sort of see two sides of it. I see like the side where people are more open to, you know, growing their businesses and talking about money and being open about wanting to make money. And then I see another side of it where it's sort of like, almost like it's evil to make money and it's evil to be quote unquote rich or to want money and that we shouldn't be doing that. And I find that very like confusing, I guess, because I don't think it's so black and white as money's either good or bad, I guess.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I really think it depends. We're still not making that connection of how the work that we do results in money coming in. Like there's an energy flow. If you want to say money is energy, or I can quote Simon Sinek and say profit is a result. We're still not making that connection that our actions, our beautiful actions of service is going to result in money coming in. So money is a result of our actions. And if we keep believing that it's evil or makes us greedy or defines us in this negative way, and I'm sure we'll speak about how we come to believe that. But if we keep believing that, well, that's the difference between those studios or those practitioners that sustain in their healing practice and as healers, and those that fade away and maybe have to get a quote unquote real job or just not, can't be of service. So if connecting yoga here, union, right? Well, we connect for ourselves everything, and that includes money. It's not connect some things in our lives and then money is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So we just need to remember that money comes, we're uniting absolutely everything, and that includes money.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that one thing I've really thought about personally for myself is, the stress and anxiety that comes with not feeling like my basic needs are met. And, in the world that I live in, how I meet my basic needs of food and shelter and clothing is that I need to make money. And if I don't make any money, I can't pay my rent. I can't buy groceries. And then, I'm not thinking about how I can serve other people. I think for me, it's just like, I need to just get a job that pays me. I don't want to hustle as an entrepreneur. I don't want to give what little energy I have to, other people in the terms of yoga. And I think that that's sort of like the situation that we end up in. It's sort of this starving artist, starving yoga teacher where our needs aren't being met. So we need something else that allows us to pay our rent. And then there's this sort of resentment towards, the yoga side of things, oh, it's not working. And I know that that's a generalization. I think that there are lots of people who are fine, keeping a job and just teaching a little bit on the side. And for them, maybe the money side of yoga is not so important. But I think that we always need to remember that exchange, because it doesn't help people to value yoga more by us offering yoga for free.
Correct. See, you hit on two different points here, and I want to highlight, if you don't mind, those two things.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we get into yoga, I don't think we really get too clear on our why, but I think in general we want to be of service to others. And you just said, if you really said it beautifully. We can't serve if we're now focused on and stressed out about whether or not we can put gas in our car or we can eat today or tomorrow, because we don't have the means, the resource to support ourselves. So that's the purpose of money. One of many purposes is so that we can focus on serving others. And so you just showed the outcome. We can't focus on serving others when we're broke, essentially. Now, on the other hand, what bothers me is now there's this expectation, right, I guess I can just do what I love so I can have a full-time job and teach yoga. Why can't we have yoga as a full-time whatever? There's still that expectation that, we have to have a real job in order to be a yoga teacher. And me personally, I actually want to break that. I want to make it a choice so that you can, if you want to work full-time, great. But if you're thinking that, I can't really make ends meet as a yoga teacher, and that's why I have something else full time, I want to work on resolving that. That's my personal mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of funny you brought up the words real job, because I was actually just reading a blog post that a friend wrote, and she's actually in the travel space. She has a travel blog, and she, works remotely. She's an online English teacher. She's taught in China and that sort of thing, and she's been overseas for 5 years now. And she's, she wrote a blog post on the things that expats don't want to hear. And I related to it a lot because, outside of yoga, I also am virtually nomadic. And the whole when are you going to get a real job thing is something that's always bothered me. And she touches on it in terms of what even is a real job? How do we define a real job, and why do we define it as something specific? What makes teaching yoga not quote unquote real? Is the work that we're doing fake? It's just so confusing.
Yeah, I really wonder where all these sad beliefs to me about what it is to be a spiritual healer or a yoga teacher, where it's this rite of passage, poverty is a rite of passage, or it's a volunteer job. Where I really wonder where that all came from, and I just feel there's just a bunch of misunderstandings that just have carried on from generation to generation to now. Mm-hmm. That I think it's just we're in a great time where we can actually share properly, shift those beliefs, that scarcity mindset or false whatever, and say, actually, this is what it can be. This is what it is. It doesn't have to be a volunteer job. It's not. Like, we're actually helping people. We're in the medical field. We're everywhere. We're corporations. We're with the bricklayers. Like, we are healing people. It's a real job. We're doing real work. We're creating transformation. We need to see that and believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of the things that I'd also like to kind of, I guess, break down in the industry is this idea that if you're really passionate about something, you do it for free. And I think there's a difference between like maybe thinking about, if money wasn't an issue, what would I spend my days doing? And maybe teaching yoga is in there, and that gives you kind of, points you in the direction of where you should be going. But I don't necessarily think that means that we should be teaching for free. And when I say that, I also feel like there's room to give back to our communities. I don't think it's necessarily about like sitting in the position of just being greedy. I look at like bigger businesses with those types of things, and you think about like big businesses host community events where they offer things to people without any monetary cost. But it's not like you get to go to like, I don't know, Apple's coming to mind. I don't know if that's a good example or not, but it's like, you can go to Apple's community events and you can go learn about their products, but you're certainly not getting a free iPhone. That's not how it works.
True. And big businesses can give because they receive. And so we have to think about that. If we receive compensation, we're able to now share, right? We can occasionally help those that are in a difficult spot. But if we're depleted, how can we really share with anybody? We have nothing to give. So big businesses, they're big, and now they're able to give to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think even on like a small business level, I think about the yoga studios that I work for, and I think that both of them do a really great job at like, classes are not free. You don't get to come for free. Memberships aren't free. They cost money, but there's lots of opportunities to go to the studio and be a part of the community with like free events or that type of thing. And I think that it's not really intended as something where, you just come to all the free events, but it's like this offering of a way of being like, thanks so much for being like a valued member of our community. Here's this like extra thing that we're doing for you. And I think that that's the difference in the mindset of versus like, oh, I'm going to try and convince this person to try to do this and value this service by offering it for free versus them paying for it, deciding it's valuable, and then offering them as a valued member of your community something back in return as a thank you. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Clearly, I have a lot of opinions on this.
Oh, me too. Me too.
It's just so complex. I think that that's the thing that's like the most challenging about it is such a complex thing. But I think that maybe a good place to go from here would be to talk about, I guess, sort of like how did we get here in terms of these money beliefs? Like, where do our money beliefs come from, and how do we actually start to shift them?
So, great introduction, right? Because you said it's all complex. Actually, we complicate it because of our emotions, like our beliefs. So if we can actually strip out what we think others, I think it's really a reflection of fear. But if we can strip out what we think and what we believe things to be and really understand the source of our emotions, our beliefs, which influence our emotions, then we'll find that at the very core, money is a very simple thing. Business is pretty simple. So answering your question, like, where does it come from? I'm going to say, let's start from the outside, right? There's still this stereotype, which we touch upon, that yoga is supposed to be a broke man's sport. So where that comes from, I'm going to say, examine the company that you keep. And I actually did a video on my business page, just being very open and honest about how I realized how I went from paycheck to paycheck to broke, just kind of giving this whole introduction. And I acknowledge, and I hate to say this because I don't think this is a yoga thing, but I happened to be surrounded by a lot of yoga teachers at the time, and I listened to their language. Making money is not yoga-like. We've heard that a lot of times. Even recently, a studio I briefly taught at, felt proud that he was paying his studio manager more money than the last the former studio, which was he pays this person $800 a month versus $250 a month. And he said, that's a lot in yoga dollars. So it was like, what does that even mean? there's a standard of what one should pay in yoga. And then, of course, I kept hearing, going back to my own broke story, I kept hearing you need to have a rich husband or a rich wife to make it as a yoga teacher. Whenever I asked about compensation, I was scolded. Oh, you're all about the money. And that influenced me. I wanted to be a successful yoga teacher. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I shouldn't be asking for money. I should tolerate being paid late, if at all. And I ended up for pretty much like 6 months to a year just teaching a lot of free classes because it seemed like the other teachers around me that I was surrounded with personally were teaching for free. And eventually, as you mentioned, the focus went from being of service, where you gave the example of being of service, to now being stressed out about eating. And that's what happened to me. I got stressed out about putting gas in my car or buying food for my dog, putting gas in my car or feeding myself. So fast forward. So here I'm broke. Fast forward. I'm coming out of being broke. And I was like, what happened? And I look at my bank statements. At least when I was paycheck to paycheck, this is my own evolution about money, I was receiving something, but the way I was spending was due to a different, let's just say I was trying to fit in that regards, right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother story, which I could go into. But in this regard, I was trying to fit in and be accepted in the community. And what I didn't realize was that I guess I was trying to fit in by being broke, like not receiving. I thought that was the way to being a good yoga teacher. Where was my focus? On impressing other yoga teachers, not on being of service to other people. So my focus was misplaced. And so if we want to talk about a source, look at the company that you keep. Listen to what they're saying. They might talk directly about money. They might judge you for what you order, for maybe how much you get. If you mention how much you get paid per class or like in privates, this happens to a lot of my colleagues. They mention how much they make per hour. They get scolded. One does a package, they get, oh, that's a lot of money. You're only supposed to be charging this. Says who? So just listen to the language. Listen to people making snarky comments about the car you drive or whether you are wearing the type of clothing. That's a money language. Oftentimes it's in relation to, money or wealth, right? So wealth-minded versus not wealth-minded. And if you find that what they say is not exactly positive, then you might want to consider creating some boundaries, whether it's disassociating yourself or finding a new group of people to surround yourself with. So that's an example, just paying attention to the people around you.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that's exactly the quote.
Jim Rohn.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's always good to consider like who you're hanging out with, because I can definitely think of times in my life too where I've picked up, that mindset, like the broke mindset, but then also other mindsets that were really toxic. And you kind of have to choose your company wisely. And I think for a lot of us that means like looking at who we work with, because those are the people that we like don't necessarily choose in our lives. Like they're not friends or just people at our jobs, but we need to look at like, do they benefit us or do they not? Because if they're not, then maybe that job is not something that's serving you. Exactly.
Other influences here. I mean, let's talk about society. There's the expectation of, and I think it's because we're ending up training society to see. Society wants yoga. So people come in, they're willing to pay. But somehow this rite of passage is almost like now starting to train people who are willing to pay. Like, let me give an example that happened to me the other week. I come in, I'm a new student. I guess I know the drill. So I try not to, but okay, I let people tell me what the offerings are. And I just said, what, I'll do a drop-in today. The sweet person at the front desk was like, well, it'll save you a lot of money if you actually just do this this deal, $15 for a whole week. But here I am, and I appreciate that, but here I am, like, I'm willing to pay your $20, $25 drop-in fee because I don't know if I'm going to come back. I'm willing. It's okay. And she was insisting. She's like, no, do this $15. And I can see both sides. Perhaps I do the $15 and then I come back 3 more times, experience more of the studio, and I end up getting a bigger package. But most likely, because she was apologizing, I'm so sorry, I just don't think it's right for you to spend this much money. That's what she kept saying. You should do the $15. And for me, it's like, why are you apologizing? You're almost indirectly training me. You're telling me something are the classes not good here? And now me knowing better is like, I think that's more about her than me. Mm-hmm. But it's just that message. It was like she was fighting me. Like, no, don't pay me money. I don't think it's right that you should spend more money. And I'm like, I'm willing to spend money.
Let me give you my money.
Let me give you this $20 bill. Let me give it to you. So there's an example that happens actually quite often. I travel around. I think we all travel around as yoga teachers, and I have that more often than not. And then another influence, of course, our childhood, right? We grow up watching our parents or parental figure. They have a certain relationship with money. They may or may not talk to us about money. So perhaps we see, I'll start with the negative. It's always the easiest thing to see. Perhaps we see the parent waking up early in the morning and coming home late at night. And when they come home, they're tired, they're exhausted, they don't have time to talk to us children. So we start to bring that association of money makes my dad or mom mean, or you have to really, really work hard for money. And I don't want that. I want to be a nicer person. I've seen kids who are well-to-do get picked on by those kids that might not have as much money. So now, rich kid, you have a silver spoon in your mouth. So they're thinking that money is bad, right? That they're doing harm because they happen to have a bigger home or their dad or mom drives a nicer car. Even some of the other stuff that we consume. Sorry, you can stop me, but I have a lot of parallels here.
No. I love this.
We know that this is fiction, right? We've got Christmas coming up for those that celebrate. We've got Scrooge. Scrooge does not pay his workers well. He's evil, right? And so there's an example, just a simple story about what it means to be generous. But you paint this rich guy as a bad person. Let's talk about 101 Dalmatians. Cruella de Vil, the original story. She's a London socialite coming from money, but she does a very bad thing to puppies. And so there's another association where rich people seem to be greedy and harm innocent animals or beings that can't defend themselves. Devil Wears Prada. I did my research. I'm sorry. But Devil Wears Prada, Miranda Priestly, this woman that no one loves, no one likes, is intimidating and is rude. And you see all the girls beneath her just hustling their buns off just to get a thank you from this woman. So right away, you're seeing these images and these fiction stories of fictional movies, but it's teaching us indirectly about money, like what it does to people.
Yeah.
And whether we believe it or not, we take that on. We absolutely take that on. As entertained as we become, as we are, as we love the movies, Devil Wears Prada was a great book.
Yeah.
But we just look at what's in our society, look at the content that we consume that's teaching us.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one that I could add to that is Robin Hood. I feel like is kind of an interesting one that I've thought about where, the fox is so cute and it's like, you're immediately like, you feel for him and you like him and you're rooting for him. And like, I don't remember what the rich evil king's name is, but he's like, he's fat, he's gross. Yep. You're clearly like, yeah, like take his money. But if you apply that in like real life, I'm like, that's a horrible lesson to teach children. Like, oh, let's like steal from people. Like, I'm not like opposed to helping out people who are, less fortunate than myself or than other people, but it's certainly not the right way to steal from people. Like,
No.
we don't know. And we have no context for how these people have earned their money. I don't know. Robinhood is a big one that I'm like, what? I was actually allowed to watch this as like a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
See, you drove that home. That was a good one.
But yeah, it definitely is like, I think 101 Dalmatians is also a really great example because like nobody really likes Cruella de Vil. Like I can relate to the feeling of not liking her. Like who is evil enough to like want to kill puppies? Like that's crazy. But it's kind of in this context of like, oh, you're rich, you're selfish, you have a lot of wealth, you don't care about other people. And I think it's sort of like, you know, people who have wealth become villainified. And then I think that in an industry like yoga where you know, we're trying to practice these like deeper philosophical things, I think we get it in our head, like being like that is not yogic. And I think that if you directly look at that without diving deeper, like I understand that direct relation.
Sure.
But when you dive deeper into the actual like nitty grittiness of making money, it's just kind of that, you know, not everyone who makes money, not everyone who has a lot of wealth or abundance is killing puppies or stealing from people.
Right. And that's what we need to bring up. It's just, I think it's really like, okay, you have these, it's really about awareness, right? Just, I think when it comes to whether it's paying bills or receiving income from our yoga practices, from our service, if we can just make it a habit to just observe, just simply observe like how we feel and maybe take it as far as writing it down as journaling. I'm sure a lot of us journal. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great step to really just getting to the bottom of our feelings, and we can change our beliefs. I listened to something that said beliefs are not real. Like we can make them into whatever we want.
Yeah.
So I think if we start to be very aware of what we believe about money, we might actually see that what we believe is not really true. And then we can shift that's where we start to make that shift, those changes about what we believe and how we're actually in control of the whole process of this resource. So
yeah, I love that. That was definitely, I think before we chatted last time, 2018 was a big, like working on my own personal money story year. And it's definitely still work that I still do today. It's not just 100%, you know, perfect or anything like that. But I found like just acknowledging how I was raised to believe about money was really important to me. And then also recognizing that one of the big things I was raised on with money was not to talk about money. And so it's really hard to, you know, if you go to a yoga studio and they say, you know, okay, well, we don't pay for classes. Well, if you don't talk about money, it's really hard to have that conversation with somebody to talk about like a negotiation or some sort of an exchange, or if somebody offers you $15 a class and you are like in your head, like, hell no, I'm not teaching for that, which would definitely be my response. If you're conditioned to not talk about it, it makes it really awkward. And I remember the first time I had to do a money negotiation, which was in the corporate world, I was super, super, super uncomfortable with it. Like when my boss said, well, what do you want to be making? I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't talk about this. Like, just write an amount down. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, you're making me uncomfortable. Why are you being so weird? But really, I was the one being weird.
See that, and that's not uncommon. I mean, there's many times, I mean, I even have a friend, she told me that her parents would tell her that when she was a child, that money is none of her business. She would hear her parents talking about money in whatever fashion. She'll say, Mom and Dad, what are you talking about? That's not your business. So when you hear that as a child and you take it with you as an adult, of course, you don't feel comfortable talking about money. And like you said, when it comes to now we become adults, negotiations. And I think a lot of us are conditioned to really connect as community. And if we see that talking about money is going to cause us to be rejected in some way, then we don't talk about it as much as we're like, but I need to talk about it. So this is about making the discussion of money comfortable. Like it's okay. It shouldn't be a make or break decision. And I think more to that, if we are solid on our purpose, like why we are teaching or why we are serving, then and someone gives us an unfair exchange, then it's okay. Then it makes it easier for us to say, well, this doesn't align with my purpose, my why, what I'm trying to do on this planet. So I'm going to walk away from this. Or you can easily counter. And again, if that person that you're negotiating with, talking to, is not in alignment with you, then you go somewhere else that's better aligned for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that kind of comes into the idea of abundance mindset. And I think of abundance mindset personally, not just in like the monetary values, but also just in, what's available to us. And I think that there's a lot of scarcity mindset in the yoga world. I think we're constantly told there's a lot of competition. It's really oversaturated. It's really hard to get a job. And I think for me, something I've considered is that, there's 7 billion people on the planet. And until every single person is practicing yoga, I don't think that the market's saturated.
Oh, no, not at all.
Like, I think there is lots of opportunities for us, but I think that we need to come from the perspective of there being, like abundance available, both, in terms of jobs and then also financially. Hey, yogis, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about Punchpass. Are you looking for inspiration as we begin the new year? Today, I want to tell you why studios around the world love Punchpass studio management software. Charlotte has found that selling her passes online through Punchpass has helped her cash flow endlessly. And online pre-registration has meant that she always knows how many clients will show up for class. Dan says simply that Punchpass is just so easy for people, and it makes him and his business look incredibly professional. Marquita says that the team at Punchpass was attentive to her, which she really appreciated. She says that if she had a question, it was going to get answered. Laura introduced Punchpass's memberships so she can automatically collect payment from her clients. She has been amazed at how much energy, excitement, and growth her business has experienced as a result. Amanda was totally overwhelmed with the other software that she was using. She needed something more simple, and she could see that Punchpass seemed to get it. She found it quick and easy to move from one software into another, into Punchpass, and she loves how Punchpass provides her with usable information at her fingertips. Head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM to read more stories about people who have transformed their businesses with Punchpass. And you are invited to try Punchpass for free for 2 weeks and see for yourself how it might work for you. Once again, it's punchpass.com/MBOM. Okay, back to the episode. I guess I'm curious, once we do the work on our money story, like I think for a lot of us, we make realizations like I can't talk about money, or I'm uncomfortable with money, or I feel like I'm not deserving of money. How do we sort of shift into that abundance mindset and bring that into our lives and businesses?
So now this is where the practice continues. I was going to say begins, but we already began it. We already started it. Let me use proper English here. We already started it by starting to become aware, right? And this is something that's always going to, this awareness is going to continue for the rest of our lives. So we're always learning. Now it's time to implement. And this is about surrounding yourself with abundance-minded or wealth-minded people, right? So perhaps our immediate surroundings might take a little bit of time to adjust. So listening to this podcast, MBOM, is a great start, right? Because there's abundant-minded people always speaking and sharing on this podcast. You can easily, there's a lot of Facebook Lives. We have books. If you really want to get comfortable with money, there's a lot of books out there that don't require thousands of dollars, right? If we want to get coaching. And I'm going to lead into that. You can easily also hire someone that will work with you to and forget what I just said about thousands of dollars, but you can work with someone that can help you with your mindset as well, because it's one thing for you to do it by yourself. It's another to connect with somebody else, whether you hire them or maybe partner with someone going through a book, right? But the point is to surround yourself with people, I think, be it virtual or in person, that are wanting to make this shift, or maybe a few steps ahead of you in terms of this abundant mindset. So starting to clean up your environment.
Right. So looking at like who you spend your time with, what types of conversations you're having, what sort of like, even like, I think, what sort of TV are you watching? What sort of social media accounts are you following? What sort of like, books are you reading? Podcasts are you listening to? Like, what is like the daily mantra that you're getting told by the people around you? I think that's so important.
Yeah. And, something that helps, I think it's more important to be okay with starting with you. I think we need to really start shifting this whole trying to be, of course we want to be accepted, right? But you need to accept yourself first. So this adjustment with money is about accepting you. So start with you and then start to worry about what other people will think. So it's really about, you have to heal yourself in order to better heal other people. So that's also why, like, it's okay to kind of to maybe shift away from certain environments temporarily that might be doing you harm until you heal yourself. Then maybe you can reintroduce yourself to said company and influence them because you healed yourself. Or maybe you have another 5 average people that you hang around with. Yeah.
And so once we've started to do this work, like say we've, made some big breakthroughs, we've been journaling, we've identified the money story, we've changed the environment, we're listening to a lot of, inspiring stuff that's like convincing us that we are worth it as a yoga teacher. And then you go into your yoga studio and you work up the courage to have a scary conversation with the studio owner, and what sort of happens next? Like if they're not willing to pay you more, like how do we kind of deal with those situations? Because I think that is like that's something I've heard from people I work with one-on-one, and it's not uncommon to kind of like, we shift things within ourselves, but then, things are still the same in the studio where we're not getting raises. We're getting paid like $15 to $35 a class, which is pretty low, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So this is where your own anchor comes from, having your own why and your own purpose. I'm sure we've heard the expression where one door closes, another one opens. So the scarcity mindset is going to tell you, just accept the situation for what it is. Perhaps now the universe, we'll just talk about the universe, you're being presented with an opportunity to take a different path, a better path for you. So it's now you are presented with a choice. You can keep things as they are and stay contained, or perhaps it's time to walk away. And guess what? When you say, thank you for your time, but this is not working for me, right? Now you're going to open yourself to more opportunities because you're not allowing a situation that is not changing, that is now not aligned with you and your purpose and your community, by the way. You're not allowing that situation to keep you contained. You're now going to evolve and grow. So this is where we need to be stronger and know when it's time to walk away. And you never know, that studio that's playing hardball might say, you know what, please, okay, we'll work with you. Right. And understand that studio too, that studio owner is also, or whatever that business, that corporation or whatever it is, they're also scared. So your action, you being the change, will also change them, whether you walk away or not. Mm-hmm. So it's really taking that next step. We have to be willing to take that next step, that next scary step, that whole step outside of your comfort zone. You're being presented with that opportunity to step outside of that comfort zone, break your own glass ceiling.
I love that. And I think too, that kind of like comes back around to what we were talking about, where it's like trusting that there are other opportunities. And I think that this was something that, especially as a new yoga teacher, I really struggled with. I felt like, any opportunity that I got was something to be extremely grateful for. And I think that there is something to say for that, like, especially when we're new, say yes to things, discover kind of what feels good, what doesn't, maybe teach a couple free classes, just don't let that continue forever, obviously. But I remember getting to a point where like, I felt sort of almost like fear around getting jobs. Like it was so much of the mentality that I'd heard is like, oh, it's really hard to get a job. So like get as much experience as you can. And then, then you'll get a good opportunity. And so I, worked hard, taught classes, taught as much as I could, got some more experience. And then I was like, okay, unless I'm offering something directly to my community, I don't teach for free anymore. Or unless it's something that's very near and dear to my heart that I really want to give back for. If I'm going to give, 2 hours of my time, it needs to be something that has some sort of an exchange. And I feel good about that. But I think that it just becomes kind of complicated because we do have to know when, like, if you have that conversation with a studio owner and they're like, we're not paying you more than $50 a class and it doesn't feel good for you, you have to be okay with leaving and trusting that there's something else out there.
Yeah. And like you said, be grateful, right? I think, so a couple of things came to mind. So trusting that there's other opportunities. There are so many examples. This is where we can look to others that are doing more, right? So I mentioned MBO, you look to those people that we respect in the yoga community that are where we would like to be or that we respect, right? Because everybody starts somewhere. So Keno McGregor, Tim Feldman, Koya Weg, Rachel Brathen. There's so many more that I'm kind of there. Everybody starts small. Like we all started in the same 200-hour, well, same or different, but same 200-hour program. We all built somewhere. So if there are people who have expanded, have more offerings, and that you really respect and you follow, know that you can do that too. So that's the main point I wanted to highlight. And then I had another point. I just lost it. It'll come back to me.
No worries. Just let me know when it's back.
Okay.
I love all of that. I think that's like one of the things that it kind of inspired me to create MBO in the beginning was looking at like my experience in the yoga industry, having taught for 6 months, and then looking to like the people I was following on social media and the people's blogs that I was subscribing to. And I was like, okay, like the mentality that I'm hearing in the studio is super different from what I'm seeing on my social media. Like there has to be a way for all of us to be successful, and success based on how we define success personally, of course. But there has to be an opportunity for this for all of us. We just need to learn how to do it. And so I obviously really love that because that's very much where the vision for my podcast started. Something that I really love about what you kind of believe in and what you put out there and just your entire business is this idea that we can connect with our money. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what it means to connect with our money? And then also, how do you actually go about doing that?
Sure. So we've been talking through a few points, and I actually just remembered my point. I'm going to weave it in here in the answer.
Yes, do it.
So it's important to know, like, I think we've been taught as kids, like I'm going to call it the traditional old school mentality. We've been taught that we shouldn't be too greedy. Rich people are greedy, that having too much is greedy. And it's important to know that as human beings, we are supposed to grow. So if we are satisfied in one area and then we continue growing and evolving, and then we're no longer satisfied with our current area, that's not a bad thing. That's growth. That's evolution. Otherwise, we'd still be cavemen and women. So in terms of connecting with money, that's something to connect to. Growth is good, right? And how I started to connect with money personally is you got to look at it. Because that's one thing we don't do. We don't look at it. We look at it only when we need it. When it's time to pay a bill, we barely look at it. So when we need it, we check the bank balance. That's if we remember our passwords. And then it's like, okay, I have enough to pay this, that, and whatever. Or when it's time for payroll, then we look at the bank balance. Okay, I guess there's enough. No, we need to look at the activity. So it will be a nice exercise for everyone to just take the most recent bank statement, past 30 days, and just take a look. and try and actually observe what comes up. I was going to say don't judge, but observe what comes up when you look at every single transaction. Chances are most of us are going to have negative emotions come up, and that's okay. My question is, when a negative emotion comes up, why? And it's probably influenced by what someone else is expecting of you. So why is it bad that you bought that thing? Well, this person's probably saying, I shouldn't buy this. It's too much. Why though? Why? So connect with your money. Look at your activity, because it's really your actions. And this is where you get to see your money's communicating with you. You get to see how you're serving your community, what your community really needs. If a class time is doing really well, how does that translate into the activity? And what were you able to do as a result of it? So connect, look at your bank statements, look at the credit cards if you have credit cards, start to see what you do and what you need.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is so important. And I was thinking as you were talking about that, my own sort of, I guess, feelings around that. And I can definitely relate to I don't know, treating myself to something like a massage or maybe buying a new shirt or something like that. And then looking back later and being oh, I shouldn't have spent that money. And I feel it's really parallel to, I guess, this you eat a little bit of dessert and then you're oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. And it's what sort of message are you giving to your brain and to your body when you say, I shouldn't have done that? Well, it's you made a decision in the moment to do it. And obviously you wanted it. It's if you look at that piece of clothing or that thing that you bought or whatever, and you are really I don't like this thing and I really shouldn't have bought that, then you can learn from it. But I think for most of us, it's we like that piece of clothing or we enjoyed that massage. So why is there a guilt associated around it?
Yeah, I think we have these traditional views that are telling us what is a frivolous expense. And it's based on someone else's beliefs. We have to remember that. So it's really about owning what's true to us. So, okay, we have a massage. It feels good. Why is it bad? So let's focus on what makes you feel good about the massage and how were you now better able to be of service to other people or a better significant other or a better friend, a better human being because you got this one massage.
Yeah.
And so we need to start, instead of thinking scarcity, I shouldn't have, that's bad. Let's think abundance. What did we gain from this? And how are we better able to be humans? I feel I'm not speaking good English again. How are we able to be better humans as a result of getting this massage or of tasting this delicious ice cream or of buying this shirt or of getting a new yoga mat? How does this benefit us? Not what are we losing. Let's get rid of the what are we losing. What are we gaining?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such an important practice.
Yeah. I really think if we honor our needs and our wants, we're not selfish, but just own it. I think what financially from abundance, everything will be all better off. Let's own our true selves.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. And I think I'm seeing more of this kind of, I guess, in the bigger space, on social media and stuff, especially in the yoga world, there's more of yes, I'm a yoga teacher and I like to buy expensive wine. Yes, I'm a yoga teacher and I occasionally treat myself to expensive purses. There is nothing wrong with those types of things. And I think that, I don't really understand the point of shaming people for those types of things, but I think it's just for ourselves personally, owning who we are and owning what we like and not feeling we have these dirty little secrets that we have to hide in the closet. It's just so silly.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Just think about it here. If you want to talk about why we overspend, we're busy trying to please other people. And at the same time, we're also shamed. So it's we're buying for two people, for example, instead of one. And then our focus is not even so much on why we're serving. We're focused on satisfying someone else that has nothing to do with our purpose. We might not even know in 20 years, so this is really about staying connected to your purpose, who you are and what you're here to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I really love that. And so do you feel like once we've taken time, like if we go look at the bank statements and just like notice the feelings, what's sort of the next step with that in terms of like getting more comfortable with the money we're spending and really connecting with the money that's coming in and out?
So now that we're getting comfortable with seeing our activity, we're starting to understand the feelings that are coming up, and we're starting to allow these feelings, I'm going to say our money, to direct us in terms of where we need to go. Now it's like we can start to do, if we do our own bookkeeping, now the comfort of the bookkeeping can come up or can be done, and it won't be so stressful. Or maybe we outsource the bookkeeping. We're able to start having conversations with our bookkeeper or tax person or anyone that we need to have conversations with. This is about connecting more often. And I really think this is about the action of organizing ourselves so that we stay focused on what we're here to do. I'm sorry, I'm repeating the same theme, but like our purpose, right? It's prioritizing us and ourselves. If we see an issue in our finances, we deal with it. If something is out of alignment, we remove it. And we start to bring in the things that are better aligned for us. So think about like making new friends, right? And I'm sure we heard this example, making new friends or dating. You don't just propose on the first date. It's a slow introduction, getting to know you, and it's a build. And so this part with connecting to your money, rather than looking at your bank statements, you're getting comfortable. This is building the habit of looking at your money. This is building the relationship so that now you can take a step further. And as I like to say, because I love numbers, bookkeeping and having good conversations with people that help you with that instead of scared conversations or no conversation at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that last part is definitely, sometimes we're just like so out of touch with the actual money side of things. And I think that in that case, it is really important to hire somebody who can help you because it's a reality of working for yourself, being a business owner. But I also think it's important to understand what's going on with your money and with your cash flow. I know you have some processes for managing money mindfully, cash flow systems and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about what those look like?
Sure. So I have a very high level process. And it's really, first of all, you have to know your why. It's also the same thing as a goal. You have to have an anchor, and it doesn't always have to be money related. It could be something as like, I'm going to get more sleep, like 8 hours of sleep instead of 6, and then see how it plays out for your community. And you can be, we're all small business owners. So this is whether it's small or even bigger, like this applies to anything. This is from when I work with, I'm not trying I want to draw a parallel here or say that whether you earn 6 figures or up to 7 figures, the behaviors are all the same.
Okay.
So just to make it clear. So have a goal. You have to have a goal. It's setting your intention for your practice. The next step is to organize. I personally believe in having multiple bank accounts, specific bank accounts. I'm a huge fan of Profit First. I'm glad it's starting to get some traction in general. Have you heard of Profit First, the book?
I think I have, but I haven't personally read it. I'll add it to my list.
For me, it was personally a game changer. There's other books that are similar. Barefoot Investor has been around longer. I'm sure people have heard of that person, at least in Australia for sure. Or Dave Ramsey, right? But yeah. A lot of them, there's similarities here. They will tell you to have these set bank accounts, especially if you don't like a budget, but this is kind of technically a form of budgeting. And each account you can have as many as you want, but up to 5, right? Have a specific purpose. And you want to get in the habit of moving your money intentionally. It's in a sense, giving your money a job. So goal, move money intentionally. Then if you do your own bookkeeping or you have a bookkeeper, they will organize. It makes the bookkeeping process so much easier because now you see you have money allocated in various accounts. And then the most important thing is to assess. You must always assess. I'd love to say weekly. You can do it monthly, but you must always check in and review because as a business owner, not just studio owner, we're yoga teachers, so we're business owners. You are the driver of your own ship. You are in charge of this resource. So you need to make sure it's being used properly, not just around tax time.
Dreaded tax season.
Dreaded tax season. Which this high-level process will make your taxes, and that dreaded word, a lot easier to handle. It'll be easier if you keep assessing, you stay on top of things, and you connect to your money.
Okay. And then if we, I guess, aren't, say for somebody who doesn't have somebody who's like hired to help them, what does it actually look like to like create this process and like do it every day, I guess, in practice?
Sure. I'm going to give a good tip that everyone can start with. We all at least have 2 bank accounts, a checking and a savings. To just simply get in the habit of moving money intentionally, my suggestion is to take your last receipt and take 1% of that and move it to to a savings account. So from your checking to a savings account, because often the savings account never really used. Right? So it's always the checking that's very active. And so really it's to get into the habit of whether it's savings for a goal or if you want to pay yourself, knowing how to pay yourself, always having money to pay your employees if you're a little bit bigger, or pay rent instead of always kind of doing the whole scratching the head like, oh man, okay, I hope I have enough money. Now it's you're learning to allocate money for specific purpose. So I would say it start with what you have, checking, move 1% to a savings account. Anytime you get paid, just get into the habit of that. Start with 30 days, maybe move to 60 days and see how you feel. And in the process, you're going to end up looking at your money more often. And then you start to increase that percentage, right? And eventually you'll get into your own flow of adding another bank account. And maybe that's for some other purpose. So it's about I can call it a cash flow system. It's really cash habit. So It's just getting to the habit of moving things, of managing your money mindfully with awareness.
Right. Yeah. And I think that mindfulness aspect is really, really key. Do you have any software recommendations or like app recommendations that can maybe get somebody started? Because I feel like sometimes, I guess like it's as simple as like setting maybe a daily reminder or calendar note, like check in with this type of stuff. But I feel like there can also be like, it can be hard to build these habits. So yeah, are there any apps or softwares or anything that you recommend or that you use for your cash flow systems and for your business?
So me, as the unfortunate answer I'm going to give you, because as an accountant, is all the software do the same thing. They really do. You can just call it accounting software or budget software. So I think it's really just getting in the habit of using your software. I think pick which one appeals to you the most. I'm going to say remove the one that's the best, quote unquote, and keep it super simple, because a lot of them come with bells and whistles that are just so high level. And I say start with where you're at. So take the software. It could be for business, QuickBooks, FreshBooks, Xero. It could be you need a budget that's on a personal level. And I should actually give you a list of things and for people to just look at. But what you want to do is you want software that will connect to your bank, so that the bank activity is simply uploaded into this software. And therefore, you move your money from a bank level, and then you also check in with this software to see what's going on. So this is really, you can look at that first page in the software. They always have a pie chart. They always show what's going on, bank balance, call it book balance. Look on a high level and just really get connected to your money in that way to see what's going on from an activity point of view, and then see what's coming up feelings wise.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that. I've been using QuickBooks for the last year and it's been super helpful. Before that, I was like entirely just on a spreadsheet that I looked at, like that I kind of, I guess, like went in depth with every single month with expenses and revenue and income and that sort of thing. And it's been so much easier having an app that's connected to my bank account that just knows when I spend money. So that's definitely saved a lot of time and headache for sure. So when we're doing this mindful practice, looking at our bank account, is there, like, say we're noticing that there's like a lot of negativity coming up, is the best suggestion that you have to kind of like journal and meditate on that? Or is there, I guess, sort of like how do we kind of, I guess, grapple or deal with all these emotions so that we can start shifting them? Because I love the idea of noticing them and being, you know, a part of your money situation pretty much every day and really getting clear on that and comfortable with it. But what do we do if we do have those negative thoughts continuously coming up?
Sure. So you're one thing I want to make clear that I think we've become an instant gratification society. I want to tell you, like, this change is never easy. So please acknowledge that, but it gets easier. So if you have negative emotions that's now starting to blind you, walk away from what you're doing. Like, there's no need to torture yourself. Walk away, take a breath, practice yoga, take a walk around the block, clear your head, and then come back to it. And then hopefully at this point you journaled the negative emotions, like what's coming up, right? And you need to confront it, but not in a traumatizing way. So we want to also come into a space of like, we're not here to torture ourselves. Remember that this is actually about being of service, like keep it positive. So if you can remember your why, like connect it to your why, and then you'll have a better understanding that, okay, I have to let these feelings come up because now you're trying to release those negative emotions. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe create an even more positive experience by add some music, right? Or I know there's plenty of us that are getting into the singing bowls, like sound therapy. You know, in general, that generates positive emotions. You can play that on YouTube as an example. Sure, why not? We drink wine, right? So
I do.
Maybe pour yourself.
I'm not judging either way, but I do personally.
I mean, I do too. So pour yourself a glass of wine. Try not to get drunk so it doesn't go downhill. But make the experience of looking at your finances enjoyable as you can. So if the negative emotions come up, I say walk away. If it's too negative, walk away, take a breath, come back to it. Create a more positive environment for yourself, right? So you can keep that positive energy flowing and don't fight your negative emotions. They have to be released. That's part of the process.
I love that. I love the idea of making it like a ritual and also making it kind of like a sacred space. I think that's really great.
Yeah. Just like you have the routine of coming to your yoga mat, make your practice of money, you know, it's a practice, right? So build that routine and make it positive for yourself.
Amazing. I love that. Those are such great tips. Are there any other tips or business lessons or anything like that you'd like to share with listeners today?
I just want to reiterate that money is there to serve you. I actually don't think I really clearly stated that, but money is really there to serve you and your community. And, you know, that's why we're in the spiritual realm. We're here to do better than Scrooge and Cruella de Vil and whatever's going on in politics or not going on in corporations. We chose this path because we're wanting to do something better. So money is to help us do better. And we just need to, as long as we keep to that, then we'll have a better relationship with money because now it's serving us and our community, our purpose. We control our cash, not the other way around.
I love that. I think that's, great final reiteration. And I've really loved this conversation. It's been so awesome getting to talk about the money side of things. I, as you know, feel super passionate about this as well. And I hope that this conversation's inspired at least one person to go out and maybe make a change with their money. So thank you for that. If people want to learn more about you, follow along, where can they go to find you?
I am squawking a lot on my Facebook page, and that's it's Mindfully Chioma. I'm on Facebook. I have yoga musings, Chi_FitYogi. I don't talk much about money. I'm just playing around as a yoga practitioner and the occasional teacher. And feel free to email me with any questions. I mean, I love connecting. And so my email address is Chioma, spelled Chioma, @themindfulbookkeeper.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm really honored to be back here and connecting with you and your community again.
Yeah, no, thank you for your time. I've loved chatting with you today.
Awesome. Same here.
All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Chioma. You can find notes and links for everything that we talked about on the podcast over at the show notes at mbomyoga.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga and in the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. I always love to hear from you guys and to hear what you think of the show and the topics that we're talking about. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback, thoughts about this or any of the episodes, please make sure that you reach out to me, info@mbomyoga.com. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to the show, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.